Visitors say the Pretoria Zoo is in a complete state of despair, but the South African National Biodiversity Institute, which helps run the facility, says it's been undergoing refurbishment for the last 2 years. Well, let's discuss this now with the Institute's Marketing and Communications Director, Nontsikelelo Mpulo. Nontsikelelo, appreciate your time. Can you provide an overview of the current state of the National Zoological Garden, addressing the concerns raised on social media about the alleged disrepair and the well-being of the animals?
Good evening to you and to the viewers, and thank you for the opportunity. The zoo is in functional order and it has been open throughout this whole repair time. We have made announcements to our visitors at the zoo every so often when we upgrade a particular area. And so visitors should have been aware, and unfortunately many people have said that they weren't aware of the reconditioning that was happening at the zoo. And so when they arrived and saw all of the construction work that has been done, and also we have had to move some animals off display while we work on their enclosures. And that has meant that some customers have not been able to have the experience that they wanted at the zoo. And so the social media backlash that happened in the last week prompted us to be more communicative, I think, which is perhaps what we should have done a lot sooner. We have been on this refurbishment program, as you have said, for the last 2 years, and quite a number of the facilities have been upgraded. We finished a number of walkways, which were completely unusable at one stage. Now they're fully functional, and we've opened up areas of the reptile section and the aquarium. And there's some work now that's going to start at Stormy Bay, where the seals are being kept, and we have now made sure that people know that all of this construction is happening, because we're trying to improve the facilities of the zoo, as it is a very old facility. It's nearly 124 years old, and Sanbi took it over in 2018 and started the refurbishment work then. We were slowed down in our progress during the COVID years, but we've now picked up the pace, and unfortunately that meant that a number of the enclosures and a number of the areas were unusable for some time while we were fixing them. But the work is nearly done. We will be keeping people more updated because we need it to be more communicative, I think.
Nontsikelelo, you talk about the zoo being functional, so I'd like you to bring us up to speed with what functional actually means. But while we're at it, it's important to read some of the comments that we've got on social media. At the Scarecrow says the animals that are there must be sent to sanctuaries and the zoo closed. It is cruel and inhumane to keep animals in unkempt and shoddy conditions. So that's the other worry, that is not only in a state of despair or disrepair, but the animals from this description seem to be endangered in some way.
Well, our vets would have a different view of that. I would have to tell you that the zoo subscribes to the WAZA, which is the World Animal Zoos and World Association of Zoos and Animals. And they hold us to the highest standards, and we actually have to get accredited every so often on a biannual basis. So we get tested according to these world standards, and also the zoo belongs to PAZA, which is the Pan-African Association for Zoos and Aquariums, and we received an award for wildlife care in August 2023, and so that is quite an unfounded statement, I believe, because we subscribe to the very highest ethical and welfare standards across the world.
So the amount of work that's been taking place has been going on for 2 years, and you said it's still going on for a few more months. And part of what you've mentioned, I mean, you mentioned, I think, walkways, which you said in some instances were unusable. But let's talk about the animals, because anybody that comes to the zoo ultimately is wanting to see the animals. Have the animals or their shelters been impacted in any way? Have you had to move any of the animals?
We've had to move the rhinos at one stage. They're back in the enclosure that they're in. We took a tour of the facility yesterday with some journalists. We were able to see rhino. Sometimes, the reptiles had to be moved while we were fixing the roof in the snake area, and they've now been put back. And so 44 enclosures that hold reptiles are fully functional now. And sometimes, some of the birds that were in their enclosures when we were working on those enclosures have been moved, but they're now back because we've completed a raptor enclosure, some chicken enclosures, and the flamingo enclosures. We have 300 flamingos on site, and they are right there at the entrance of the zoo, and people are able to see and enjoy their full, colorful nature.
I'm inclined to want to visit the zoo because your description of the state of the zoo and the comments that I'm reading would speak to, please don't waste your time taking your family to the Pretoria Zoo. There are hardly any animals left, is contrary to what it is that you are saying. And the reason we're having this conversation is because there seems to be a dissatisfied community of zoo lovers or zoo goers that are not impressed. And I was just reading your bio, and it states, I'm responsible for marketing the 11 national botanical gardens and 2 zoological gardens managed by Sanbi to the public as spaces for enjoyment, social cohesion. There seems to be very little enjoyment by those that are coming to Pretoria Zoo at the moment.
I beg to differ, Hugo, because we hosted over 200,000 people in the zoo last year, 215,000 in the 2022 and 2023 year. And they have had, we did research in June of 2022, and what our visitors told us is what they want is access to green spaces within the city and a safe environment, which is what we provide. And they come to relax in that environment. So I believe that we do provide that kind of environment. We certainly could do better in terms of communicating the work that has been ongoing in the zoo so that people can adjust their expectations about seeing all of the cordoned off areas for safety, and also then in terms of when the animals are being moved off display, we'll certainly be better at communicating that kind of information.
Nontsikelelo, now we've read that you've had a preliminary funding cut of 7.2% for the department. How are these financial constraints impacting the zoo's ability to carry out necessary renovations, obviously some of which you're already carrying out, and ensuring the welfare of the animals?
In fact, we received funding of 105 million rand from the department for this project. And so our funding for this kind of project has not been cut. The 7.2% is across the entire institute, which speaks to areas of research and perhaps, staffing or other areas, but certainly not for this kind of project because we realized that, we went to the department and asked for this money to make sure that we were able to complete these upgrades. And so there hasn't been a funding reduction in relation to these projects. And in fact, we went to the National Department of Tourism and they've given us an extra 18 million rand to complete the work that needs to be done. And that has already been committed.
So that's 123 million in total. My maths almost got the better of me there.
For these particular projects.
Yeah, and
that is outside.
2 years plus. So you've received 123 million to carry out this project, and it's still taking 2 years and a bit, and it's incomplete. Why is it taking so long? One would imagine that if all the funding was available by the 18 million extra that you've had to apply for, that the project would be complete in a much shorter time.
The zoo is 83 hectares, and there are quite a number of enclosures. I think there are about 56 enclosures that had to be refurbished. And so it had to be done in stages. Stormy Bay is what we're starting now, and it's a complete overhaul. It will take a few months for that to be completed, but it's just that the facility is quite large. Some of the areas had to be stripped and completely overhauled. It's just taking a bit of time. We started with the parking area, which took a couple of months, and so we've been doing it in phases, and it's nearly complete now. We actually have been given a deadline of this financial year to get it done, so it will be complete.
Well, the one thing that we're certainly going to put forward is a visit to the zoo and see for ourselves, because obviously there's a lot of social media and negative media feedback which is contrary to what it is that you are telling us. But how do you intend to respond to these public concerns and criticisms? I know the one aspect that you've spoken to, Nontsikelelo, is you need to communicate a little bit better.
Certainly. I mean, we have been galvanized. I mean, we accept that people have had the particular experience at the zoo, and we take that on board. And we have instituted some additional measures to make sure that the progress that is being made on the areas is, at a pace. We showed some journalists yesterday an area that has just been a new build. So rather than refurbishing, because we've completed some of the refurbishing, we're now building a new aviary in a space that hadn't been used before in that way. And so that kind of stuff is at the beginning of the project and will take time. But in the meantime, people can see gorillas, they can see lions, they can see the big five. We do have tiger also in addition to the big five. And so we invite you to come and visit the zoo. You will see that there are animals in the enclosures. There may be one or two enclosures that do not have animals in them, and they are now clearly marked because, as I said, we perhaps weren't as clear in our communication or as in your face in our communication with people at the zoo, but we've now stepped up that aspect of our work, and we will continue to keep people updated as we continue with the refurbishments and the new builds.
Invitation accepted. Thank you very much. Nontsikelelo Mpulo, Institute's Marketing and Communications Director, speaking to us about the Pretoria Zoo.